Welcome back to Tell Us Something. Is everybody ready for the next round? All right. Our next storyteller is Jessica Muri. She's a journalism student at the University of Montana. She's a hiker, dog lover, and an avid Subaru driver. You've probably seen her around with that description. She recently won the Hearst Award for Best Radio Journalism in the country, which she finds surprising. She is, in fact, looking for a job as soon as she graduates in May. So if anybody knows of jobs in the journalism field for Jessica. Jessica, please come and tell us your story. Welcome to the stage, Jessica Muri.
I'm going to tell you how I became an avid Subaru driver. I came to Montana with a Volkswagen Beetle. It had a front-wheel drive. It was red, 1998, and it did not fare well in Montana winters. I know this because I almost slid off of I-90, US 12, and my very own street. So last Christmas break, I went home to Boise, Idaho to buy the official Northwest car for adventurers, which is, of course, the Subaru Outback. So I got home driving white-knuckled the whole way, and I called my dad. Because the relationship my dad and I have is it revolves around cell phones and computers and cars. And it doesn't go past that, and we're fine with that. You know, a good afternoon for us is eating at our favorite Thai restaurant and playing Rock Band. And we're good. That's my relationship with my dad. And so we started the hunt. It was a very unusually dry winter in Boise. It was late January, and the ski resort hadn't even opened yet. But the day we did our Subaru hunt, a foot of snow fell. So I thought, perfect driving conditions, right? For test driving. So we started, slipping and sliding into every single lot we could find a Subaru at. Now, my dad's an airline pilot, and so his entire thought process works through checklists and inspections. And so he would pop hoods, he would test radio dials, he would blast the stereo, he'd check windshield wipers. Nothing was good enough. Every single tear, every single scratch, if there was anything wrong with the car, he would say, Jessica, if they don't take care of the outside, they don't take care of the inside. It either had too many miles or too little tread, or nothing was good enough. So we kind of talked this over with McDonald's French fries and a burger, because my dad's an airline pilot, right? So for him, spending his entire life in airports, this is sort of his specialty, McDonald's. And I said, why don't we try looking on Craigslist? And he said, no, because if there's anything wrong with the car, there's no warranty. You cannot trust Craigslist. But I'm already like halfway down the page on my iPhone, and I find this perfect Subaru Outback, and it's black. It has leather interior, heated seats, dual moonroofs. It was a manual transmission, 77,000 miles. Perfect. So I convinced my dad, and he said, okay, we'll go look at it. I call the number, and this woman with a very thick Russian accent answers. And I'm not going to try to do the accent, but she goes, meet us on the corner of McMillan and Locust Grove. Okay. So we get there, and it's 5:30 in the evening. And then it's 5:45. And then it's 5:50. And then a silver Volkswagen Beetle pulls up beside us. The window rolls down, and this woman, she's got big brown hair and big lips and like big minx scarf. And she has her little Russian husband sitting beside her, and he's balding with kind of this comb-over thing. And she says, follow us to our house. Okay. So these two Volkswagen Beetles sort of like slide on the ice and slush through this nice neighborhood with, you know, these wrought iron street lamps, and it's classy. And we get to their house and they pull out the car and it's just glowing in the street light. Like, this is gonna be my Subaru Outback. And they ask, do you want to take it for a ride? Yes, we do. We drive it around the block, and even my dad can't find anything wrong with it. He even notes that, like, the stereo is the original Subaru stereo. And so we pull it back, and it's about 6:15, 6:25 by now. And he said, you know, I gave him the look, you know, like, look. And he's like, all right, so are you going to take a money order or a cashier's check? And the little Russian man goes, cash only. And he's like, what? Why? I mean, a money order is the exact same thing. Why do you need cash only? And he's like, cash only. But there's someone coming to buy it at 7 o'clock, sight unseen, with cash. They have the cash. So if you can get the cash before they get here, you can have it. Which is great, because it's like 6:30 on a Wednesday night. And my dad's like, where are we going to get $9,000 in cash right now? So we kind of look at each other, and then we remember that there's an Albertsons down the street with the U.S. Bank teller, like, in store. So we rush to the car, you know, drive as quick as we can in the slush, run through Albertsons, get to the teller. We're, like, panting, and we're like, we need $9,000. And the teller's like, are you sure this is legit? We're like, yeah, no, it's good. And he's like, 100, 200, 300, and we're like, and he's like, 400, 500, 600. So my dad scoops up this envelope, which is big, it's like thick, you know, it's a lot of money. And he goes, Jess, this is a lot of money, cover my back. So we go running through the Albertsons, running through the icy parking lot, get in the car, and actually speed back to this house. It is 6:45. We are signing the bill of sale. We are getting the title, and we got the keys. And we got the car. My dad doesn't actually trust me to drive the car home yet, and so I'm in my Volkswagen Beetle, and he's in my Subaru. And he calls me on the phone, and he's like, Jess, we got it. Can you believe we got it? And we pull up into the driveway, and the phone rings again, and it's the Russians, and they're like, how much are you selling your Volkswagen for? Okay, well, first, my Volkswagen, the grill is missing. The odometer has been stuck at 65,000 miles for the past, like, 3 years. The speedometer doesn't work. The cruise control doesn't work. The radio shorted out, like, a year ago. The side mirror is shattered. I mean, the oil pan drips. This is not in good shape. But they're like, no, it's okay. Our daughter has the silver one, and our other daughter wants the red one. So we'll buy it from you. You come back tomorrow morning, we buy it, okay? Okay. So I drive back the following morning. We swap titles, we swap bills of sale, and we swap cars. As is, done deal. So I'm driving back to Missoula, and I've got my dog, and I've got my Nalgene bottle, and I've got my Subaru, which they don't actually give you at the border. And I'm 23 miles outside of Butte, Montana. I've got the heat seater on. I've got cruise control going. I'm listening to This American Life. And I feel like this successful adult woman in my successful adult car. And my temperature gauge spikes into the red. And I kind of slow down, right? And then my check engine light comes on instantaneous. It's just right away. And so I'm going, okay, I'm going to pull off. And I look into the rearview mirror, and there's just smoke billowing behind my car. Oh my God. So I pull off to the side of the road. You know, I grab my dog, and I run away from the car because I don't know if it's going to explode. I don't know anything about cars. And I call my dad because he's the only person I could call in this situation. And I say, hey, Dad. What's the number to AAA? So, 2 head gaskets later and $2,000 later, I think maybe my dad might have been right about this whole Russian Craigslist car thing.
Natalie Dawson is a recent transfer to Missoula. She comes from Alaska, and I remember her calling me right when Tell Us Something started, saying, hey, I know about this. I used to do this in Alaska. So this is her first time on the Tell Us Something stage. She enjoys long walks with no maps, paddling glacial rivers in small inflatable boats, and skiing up and down mountains, and any opportunity to lose cell phone service. Please welcome to the stage, Natalie Dawson.
Okay, I'm going to open with the knowledge that at least half the room probably knows about the very recent scandal with Lululemon and the see-through spandex. This talk has nothing to do with that. And I have a layer on underneath. These are not see-through. Okay, let's set the stage. It's 27 below zero with the wind chill. When you live in the Midwest, you always factor in the wind chill. That's just how it goes. So it's 27 below, and I'm sitting in what to any innocent bystander or pilot flying overhead in a small Cessna would look at and say, that's a circus tent. Inside that circus tent are 700 people crowded around each other, sandwiched in. And we're all sitting there, maybe for different reasons, but in general for the same reason. We're waiting to start a cross-country ski race. It's northern Michigan. It's January. It's 27 below zero. My dad had a really hard time starting the car in the morning before we got to the trailhead. I knew it was going to be a bad morning. You cannot race unless the temperature actually gets up to 10 below. So we're sitting in this tent, and on either side of me are these two really big Canadian guys. And at the time, I think I'm 15 or 16. And they're much larger than me and much older. And the one guy on my left is worried about his hands. He's really worried about his hands. He's like, God, I don't know if even if it gets to 10 below, I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose at least a couple fingers. And I'm only 16. I don't want to lose any fingers yet. That's not something you want to hear at 16. That's actually something that most 16-year-olds aren't even worried about. But I was actually worried about it thanks to the tall Canadian guy on my left. The guy on my right, he's really worried about his toes. Same thing. He's worried about how many toes he's going to lose. Thus begins an entire lifetime of where I will and still do worry about my digits, and this will come into play later. Anyway, so I'm listening to these guys banter back and forth, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is my first 50-kilometer ski race. I've never done this before. My dad told me that I'd be fine. I ate like 12 pounds of pasta last night. I'm going to be just fine. I'm going to be just fine. And so I'm sitting there with my thoughts about how okay I'm going to be listening to these two Canadian guys talk about them losing their digits. And they're from Ontario. That's further north. I'm from Detroit. On the other side, the warm side of the river. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna be all right. So we're all sitting in this tent, and then I start thinking, my transcendental self, well, everyone's having these thoughts. Everyone's worried about the same thing, and we're all gonna have to get out there at 10 below and ski, and that's just how it's gonna be. And then I think, what is it that we all have in common? We're all here for different reasons, but we all have something in common. And then I realize, yes, the one thing we have in common is we're all clad in extremely tight clothing. This is a story about extremely tight clothing. Okay, I grew up in Detroit, so if occasionally I make these hand signals that make it look like I might bust into a hip-hop song, that's why. I'm white, but I'm from Detroit, so that tendency will always be there. Anyway, so I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, right? Just to list off some things that Detroit gave us. I mean, we all hear about it now in the news, but Detroit gave us paved roads. Yeah, we were the first ones with paved roads, guys. We were also the first ones with a news radio station, WWJ AM radio, news and weather on the 8s. It's still in existence. Fred Bear, the Ted Nugent song, Fred Bear. Ted Nugent actually has his own radio station in Detroit. It's called 101.1 The Bear. We also were the first ones to discover cream soda. And we eat more donuts than any other city in the country, which you wonder, interesting. She's talking about extremely tight clothing. How does that go with a city that eats the most donuts in the country? Well, because in my world, Detroit equals spandex. That's just how I was raised. Okay, so So I was raised in a family in Detroit, Michigan. I was raised on 8 Mile. Some of you may have heard it. An Eminem, who's a white rapper, did a movie back in the mid-90s called 8 Mile. We watched it when I was in my college dormitory, and I'm like, that is not what 8 Mile looks like. Not at all. I lived in a small suburb. It does not look like what Eminem makes it look like in that movie. But I did grow up on 8 Mile, where there's not a lot of spandex, and there's a lot more rapping than there is spandex. So on 8 Mile, when it snowed, my dad and I would put on spandex, and we would do interval workouts on 8 Mile. Between 8 Mile and 9 Mile, which is 1 mile. It's easy. It's flat out there, guys. We have to have some kind of way to measure distance. So we measure this distance, we do our intervals, we come home. Occasionally we make the Detroit news. There's a couple articles about people in spandex on snowy days in Detroit. These are the things I grew up with. And it was fine until I hit 14, and then it was no longer fine. I was in high school. It was not cool to be in spandex. My dad would call the school anytime I had a really good cross-country ski racing result, right after they talked about the pom-pom squad and the football players and the basketball team in the winter and the soccer team and the lacrosse team. And they'd be like, and Natalie Dawson got 5th place at the Junior National Championships for cross-country skiing. And I would hang my head and think, oh, that is so not cool, Dad. That is so not cool. You do not understand what that just did to my reputation. You have no idea. And around the same time that I'm arguing with myself about how uncool this is, and meanwhile, I'm, 15, 16, getting my sophomore, junior year, just started to be allowed to date, and my dad threatens me that if I don't come home at curfew, he will run through the school gym at the next home basketball game in his spandex screaming, I am Natalie Dawson's father. That is a very potent threat to any parents out there. Even if you don't wear spandex or Speedos, if you throw that threat out there, your daughters or your sons will listen. I listened. I didn't always make curfew, but I was pretty damn good. So anyway, I get into high school. This isn't cool anymore. At the same time, Snickers comes out with a commercial. And in this commercial, there's 2 guys, very cool looking guys on a chairlift. And there's a guy cross-country skiing. They're all young, in their early 20s. And the guys on the chairlift watch the guy on the cross-country skis below the chairlift open a Snickers bar. And they say, oh wow, Snickers really satisfies. And this was a slogan for like 15 years for Snickers bars. Okay, nondescript commercial, most people won't remember it. However, it changed my life for like 5 years, because now the only thing that anyone in Detroit, Michigan knew about cross-country skiing was that they're the uncool people under the chairlift eating Snickers bars while the cool people on the chairlift laugh at them. Okay, so I somehow make it through high school relatively unscathed, and I get to college. And at this point I realize not only have I been completely brainwashed by my parents to think that it's normal to sport this stuff and go to the store afterwards as long as you do the following. Hold on, I'm dressing myself to go grocery shopping. This is what my parents did. Okay, no, Natalie, don't freak out. It's totally fine. I put a sweatshirt on just like you asked me to. Okay, great. That's awesome. I'll totally feel fine when we run into every guy I've ever had a crush on in high school in the grocery store. So in college, I've embraced spandex at this point. I'm cross-country ski racing. I'm biking. After college, I moved to Alaska. Not only in Alaska do I find people that wear spandex, but they do it for fun. They sew their own spandex. They go to weddings in spandex. They take their spandex off and go naked. They wear butterfly wings in spandex, tutus in spandex. I have found my people. It is amazing. So I spend years in Alaska appreciating the extremely tight clothing and the propensity for wearing it for any reason or no reason at all. But I continue ski racing, and I'm sorry for Rossignol if there happen to be any Rossignol people out there. I do not mean to, wear the uniform in funniness, although I do in some ways. But I continue to race, and I realize that my parents have taken a girl from Detroit, Michigan, who, I could have grown up doing whatever and never really appreciating getting outside and being different, and I could have been really unsure of myself, because we all go through that phase, and I never went through it, because that phase when we're all unsure of ourselves, I had to wear this. You can't be unsure of yourself in spandex. And this actually, just as a disclaimer, is way better than what it was when I actually was 14. These were one pieces with a zipper up the front. Yes, and they were neon. This is way better. And I realized that, shoot, my parents had it right all along. Good job shoving me in a tent with 700 other people, making me feel completely worried about things that, I don't know, most teenage kids don't worry about, like their fingers falling off, or these large Canadians talking about losing digits and then realizing, like, whoa, what are we all scared of? We're all in spandex anyway. This is my biggest fear, and I'm over it. So now every year, and we have always, my family gets together in some random place, and we hang out. We usually sleep in tents, and we get up in the morning, we put extremely tight clothing on, and we go do something. That's my story.
Our last storyteller is Jim Ambrose. He is a Louisiana native, a former bike messenger, and an avid baseball fan. Please welcome Jim Ambrose.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for hanging around. I'm going to tell you a story about how I went from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Missoula, Montana. And it's going to be great. I played soccer in college. I got almost a full scholarship to play soccer at a small school in central Illinois. Really competitive Division II program. But for a competitive Division II program, we didn't travel very much. We just stayed in Missouri and Indiana and Wisconsin and stuff. But my freshman year, we went all the way to Clinton, South Carolina. Some Clinton, South Carolina fans in the house? And of course, we took the bus. You know, it was like out of Major League, the bus. I mean, there's stuff falling off of it and everything like that. So we were going to play two teams there, Presbyterian and Catawba. And two teams that were ranked much higher than we were. We were expected to lose. So we get there, our coaches are in the hotel room, and they're having us visualize, visualize positive things happening, and then they manifest on the field. Well, that's never happened for me, except for this weekend. It was extraordinary. The field was manicured like 1,000 people got down with shears and just were snipping the grass. It was perfect. Will knows what I'm talking about. And the team played well. They played extraordinarily well. And I played out of my mind. And we won both games. It was great. So when the coaches dismiss us, they send us off to the locker room. I'm walking away. I'm feeling great. I'm completely high. Oh, do I need it? Oh. And this big, beefy, officious-looking guy comes up to me, and he was like, you know what? That was an all-American performance. All-American. And I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And he's like, you know what? We'll be watching. I don't know what that means at all. And but it feels good. It feels great. So I am floating to the locker room. Absolutely floating. I get there. I peel off my sopping wet jersey, my disgusting cleats and shin guards, and I hear my teammates, hooping and hollering in the shower. And I I cut the ankle tape off and make my way to the shower. And I was so high. I mean, I was seeing the world through this incredible artistic athletic lens, like how artists or mathematicians, they see the world through a certain lens. I was seeing it that way, and everything felt so great that when I entered this open shower, dike showers as they're called, I forgot to avert my eyes. And for the first time, I really noticed how beautiful my teammates were. The water falling off their skin, off their fingertips, their beautiful carved calves, their sturdy thighs, their asses and their abdomens and their tits, so young and supple, their nipples utterly untouched by responsibility, complete bodies toned by discipline and youth. I really forgot myself. But you know, anytime I need to tell a story about my life before the age of 28 or high school, college, elementary school, I always come to a point where I have to remind myself that certain language is inappropriate. Dyke, tits, pussy, fag. They're not appropriate. They're not appropriate coming out of my mouth because they were disrespectful, they are objectifying, they could be seen as vulgar and hateful, dismissive. There was a time when that language was not only acceptable, but it was encouraged for me. Because there was a time when I did have tits, and I did have a pussy, and I was a dyke, and I had many gay male friends who were my brothers, and who I affectionately called fags. There's a story behind that. When I was 12 years old in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, my parents were hosting this cocktail party, not something they normally did. But my mother chose this time to take me into the back room the bedroom where she shared with my father, and sat me on the bed and said, "You were born a hermaphrodite." Hermaphrodite. These were her words. And she told me, "Soon you're gonna have to start taking pills to make you look like the other girls, to make you grow breasts, to make you grow taller, to have the typical female fatty deposits." And then she said, further down the line, you'll have to have a surgery to complete you so your husband can have sex with you. Important distinction, not so I could fuck my husband, but so somebody could fuck me. My mom, true to her own heterosexuality. So back to the soccer game. 2 months later, I went back to Louisiana, and I was sent to Children's Hospital in New Orleans, and I'm 17 years old still. And I'm given what's called a vaginoplasty. The hole that a man, my husband, can have sex with. That didn't exist before because I wasn't born with one. And so they sent me right back to school after that with not so much as a therapist conversation or a meaningful conversation with a doctor or a meaningful conversation with my parents. Lots of isolation, lots of shame, lots of secrecy, which are the ingredients that are necessary if you're going to lie to a child about the way they were born and mistreated. So I was alone in central Illinois, and I started drinking and smoking, and quickly my soccer fitness just was diminished. I remember one day I had to be dragged to class, the class that my coach taught. He was a political science professor, and I had to be dragged there because I can't miss his class. My friends, my teammates were humiliated for me. So shortly after that, I transferred to a school in Louisiana, and things didn't get better. They did not get better. They got worse. I drank more. You'd think I was going home and I would have more people to talk to or more contacts, but that wasn't the case. It's like, it's like the old saying about somebody who's, alone in a crowded room. There were lots of people I know, but they did not know me, or I knew. So I went looking for my medical records. I went to the office of the last doctor that I saw. And, thanks, Mark. And he gave them to me, and it was just like this stack. It was really thick. And I learned many things. I learned that I was born with a phallus between my legs. It was deemed too small to function as a male penis. I was born with testes. They were undescended. I had XY chromosomes. I was without one iota of female anatomy or female reproductive bits. So why was I raised as a girl? Why? Because no doctor wants to doom a young man to a life with an unsatisfactory penis. And if you're looking for more logic than that, you will be found wanting. I learned that these surgeries happen to kids every day. I learned that they are powered by prejudice and fear and cosmetic satisfaction. I mean, these children, by and large, I'm talking about intersex children, by and large, they are born healthy. And these damaging, irreversible surgeries are performed for the satisfaction and comfort of the parents, for the satisfaction and the comfort of the doctors. I learned that there was a movement being built. A community was growing in Pocatello, Idaho. No, I'm just kidding. I needed a space where I could go and grow and be seen and talk to people who could have a conversation with me about when terrible things happen to you when you're young, when your parents are afraid you're going to turn out queer, gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender, when they are afraid of your body, and out of love, not malice, out of love, they try to correct you. Because people always ask me, they say, oh, what's your relationship like with your parents? I don't know two parents that love their kids more than mine. So I made my way to San Francisco and became an advocate. I met people. I met intersex people. I met academics. I met doctors, sympathetic doctors, asshole doctors. I met dim-witted doctors. There are some doctors who were just not very smart. And I began to speak. I've been given the opportunity to speak all over the world. Speak to medical audiences, to academic audiences, to groups of intersex people. Parents of intersex kids especially are really important because they want to see what their kid's going to turn into. How is my kid going to develop if I decide to have this altering surgery? Some of the best conversations I've ever had. So at some point, my professional travels took me to a conference where I met a woman from Montana, and I fell in love with her. And on my first trip to Missoula, I fell in love with it too. I've been here since October, and really all I can feel is pride and the real privilege of being a part of your community. And I thank you for it. And it should be halftime as the Grizz in Syracuse right now. So I'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, Mark.